The screams from Sector 9. Jack was a human technician working near the edge of the alien-controlled zones. His job was simple: fix broken satellite cables and keep the systems running. He didn't like going too close to Sector 9, but today, his orders sent him right beside it. Sector 9 was a quiet, cold place. No one ever went there unless ordered. Some said it was just an old research base. Others whispered dark stories about strange cries, missing workers, and things best left forgotten. Jack didn't believe in rumors. He believed in wires, circuits, and broken tools. He adjusted his headset and walked into the cold wind, ready to finish his task. But then, he heard it. At first, it sounded like metal screeching, but as he listened closer, he realized it wasn't metal. It was a scream. Faint, distant, but real. And it didn't sound human. Jack stopped working. He turned toward the black, sealed wall of Sector 9. The scream came again. Long, painful, and full of fear. His hand trembled. Just the wind, he whispered to himself. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He lay on his small bunk inside the worker outpost. The scream echoed in his head again and again. It wasn't an animal. It was someone begging for help. He asked the outpost commander the next morning. "Sector 9? Stay away," the commander growled. "It's locked for a reason. Forget what you heard, but I think someone is down there," Jack replied. "If you go near it again, you'll be fired. Or worse," the commander warned. Jack nodded, but inside, he had already made his decision. That night, he returned to the edge of Sector 9 with only a flashlight and a stolen clearance card. The outer doors opened with a hiss. Inside, everything was dark. Dust floated in the air. Old machines beeped softly. He moved quietly through the metal halls, following the faint sound. Then he saw the room. It was locked with 3 layers of security, but his card worked. Inside was a large glass tank. The room smelled like burnt wires and chemicals. A soft blue light shone down on the tank. Jack stepped closer, and then he saw her. A girl, or at least something like a girl. Her skin was pale, blue, almost glowing. Her body was thin, weak, covered in strange marks. Tubes were stuck into her arms. Her eyes were shut. She looked half dead. Jack's heart froze. This wasn't just an alien. This was a child, and she had been hurt, badly. Suddenly her eyes opened. Bright, glowing purple eyes locked onto his. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just stared. Jack whispered, "Can you hear me?" She blinked once. He looked around and saw a screen. It showed her name, Subject 37K, Female Test Unit. Below it were words that made Jack feel sick. Status: active for genetic modification testing. Pain level monitoring: high. Sedation: low. They were experimenting on her. And they weren't even hiding it. Jack felt anger rise in his chest. He tried pressing buttons to unlock the tank. Nothing worked. He looked back at her. "I'm going to get you out," he said. A faint tear rolled down the alien girl's cheek. Suddenly, an alarm blared. Jack jumped. Red lights flashed across the room. Someone knew he was here. He ran to the control panel and smashed it with a wrench. Sparks flew. The tank hissed open. The alien girl fell into his arms, weak and shaking. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Jack lifted her carefully. She weighed almost nothing. He whispered, "Hold on. I'm not leaving you here." And with that, he ran, carrying the one thing he was never supposed to find: the girl who screamed, the secret of Sector 9. She wasn't one of them. Jack ran through the narrow metal corridors, holding the alien girl in his arms. Alarms screamed around him, red lights blinking like angry eyes. His boots slammed against the floor, every step louder than the last. Behind him, he heard voices. Cold, robotic, alien. They were coming, but Jack didn't stop. He tightened his grip on the girl. She was cold, so cold. like her body had forgotten how to make heat. Her skin glowed faintly in the dark, and her breathing was shallow, but steady. He reached an old supply lift. It hadn't worked for years, but Jack had fixed stranger things before. He laid the girl down gently, ripped open the panel, and crossed a few wires. The lift jerked, groaned, then started moving. As they rose, he looked down at her face. Who was she? She wasn't like the aliens who ran this base. They were tall, armored, and sharp-edged. This girl was small, fragile, and looked almost human in some ways. Her skin was smooth, her face round. No spikes, no armor, no threat. She opened her eyes again. Easy, Jack whispered. You're safe now. She blinked slowly and looked at him. Then she did something strange. Something that froze Jack's breath. She reached up and touched his face. Not with fear. Not with anger. With curiosity. Like she had never touched another living being gently before. The lift stopped. Jack carried her outside the building toward his old maintenance vehicle. The sky above was dark with clouds. Rain started to fall, light and cold. He placed her in the back seat, wrapped a blanket around her, and drove toward his camp. The whole time, she didn't speak, but she watched him, like she was trying to understand what kind of creature he was. Back at the camp, Jack locked the door, turned up the heater, and made her a drink. She didn't touch it, just stared at the steam with wide, unblinking eyes. Jack sat across from her. You're not one of them, are you? He asked softly. She tilted her head. I mean the others and the ones in Sector 9. You're different. The girl didn't speak. But then slowly she pointed to herself and whispered a single word in a strange accent. Test. Jack frowned. Test? You mean they created you? She nodded. Jack felt sick. They made you just to test on you. She looked down. Her fingers gripped the blanket tighter. Suddenly she looked up and pointed to Jack. Not hurt? He shook his head. No, I won't hurt you, I promise. Then she did something even more strange. She smiled, small, weak, but real. It was her first smile in years. She pointed at her own chest and said, Kirella. Jack repeated the name. Kirella. She nodded again. Her name was beautiful, and yet it was probably spoken only once, when they marked her as Subject 37K. He stood up. You need rest. But just as he turned away, Kirella said one more thing in broken English. You first one who saw me. Jack paused. She wasn't talking about vision. She meant something deeper. She meant noticed, cared, treated her like a person. And that, more than any rescue, was what she truly needed. But peace wouldn't last long. Far out, beyond the mountains, a signal had already been sent. The scientists of Sector 9 had lost their prize, and they were coming to take her back. Chased through shadows, the wind outside howled like a beast in pain. Jack stood near the window watching the sky. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that warns you something is coming. Inside the small camp shelter, Kirella slept on a bed made from spare blankets and soft jackets. Her breathing was better now. Her skin had some color again. But the bruises were still there. So were the scars. Jack hadn't told her, but he'd seen the newsfeed. Sector 9 breach. 1 test subject stolen. Suspect, human technician. And worse, bounty issued. They were going to come for him and her. He checked his tools. An old plasma cutter, a smoke charge, and 1 emergency flare. Not enough to fight, barely enough to delay. Suddenly a soft sound broke the silence. Creak! The door lock turned by itself. Jack spun around and raised his cutter. But it was Kirella. She had woken up and walked to the door, standing with her hand on it, listening. They are close, she whispered. Smell. The air. Jack stepped beside her. How can you tell? She looked at him with glowing purple eyes. I was born in a lab, but my senses were made for escape. Before he could ask more, a loud boom shook the ground. Dust fell. From the ceiling, outside, a search drone hovered near the roof, blinking red. Then, without warning, it spoke in a cold voice. Return subject 37K or this unit will engage. Kirella flinched. Jack grabbed her hand. Basement. Now. They ran through the back hallway of the shelter. Jack pulled open the metal trapdoor that led to an old storm drain tunnel. It hadn't been used in years. It smelled like rust and whetstone. Kirella hesitated. Dark. Jack clicked on a light strapped to his wrist. Stay close, I've got you. They stepped into the tunnel, shadows swallowing them. Water splashed around their boots. The drone above the house fired a shock blast, tearing through the roof. Too late. They were gone. They moved fast, deeper into the underground tunnels. The walls whispered back every sound they made. Jack led the way, checking corners with his light. Behind him, Kirella walked silently, barefoot, never once asking to stop. Jack finally said, You're strong, you know. She looked confused. No, I'm small, weak. He shook his head. Not every fight is about muscles. Sometimes surviving is the real strength. Kirella didn't answer, but after a few minutes she whispered, Then, I have survived much. The tunnel opened into an old mining shaft. It was wide and broken in parts, a perfect place to lose anyone following them. But Jack had forgotten one thing. They had her scent. Suddenly, from above the shaft, metal claws dropped down. Alien tracker drones. Sleek, black, fast. One of them landed in front of Jack. Its voice said, Return the subject. You are not authorized to carry alien genetic material. Kirella stepped behind Jack. She grabbed his arm tightly. Jack stared at the machine. She's not material. She's a person. The drone paused. Then it raised its weapon. Jack dove forward, slamming the flare into the drone's eye. The light exploded, blinding it. He grabbed Kirella's hand. Run! They sprinted across the shaft, ducking behind old carts and rocks. Lasers flew past them, lighting the dark walls. Kirella pointed to a crack in the side wall. There! Hide! They squeezed inside a small crevice, breathing hard. The drones passed, searching but not seeing. Inside the silence, Jack whispered, You okay? She nodded, her voice low. They made me fear the dark, but with you it feels different. Jack smiled, though sweat ran down his face. Then we'll stay in the dark a little longer. Far above, the leader of the Sector 9 recovery squad watched the drone feed. Where is she? He growled. A junior officer said, They've escaped the drone patrol, sir. They're in the abandoned shafts. The leader narrowed his eyes. Prepare, the hunter team. If the human won't return the girl, we'll take both. Back in the tunnels, Kirella leaned her head on Jack's shoulder. I was born in the shadows, she said softly, but now I run toward the light. A place with stars. The tunnels felt endless. Jack and Kirella walked for hours through the cold, wet darkness. Every sound made them freeze. Every echo felt like a footstep behind them. Finally, they reached an old ladder. Jack climbed first, pushed open the hatch, and peeked out. No drones, no guards, just open sky. He waved Kirella up. She climbed slowly, weak but steady. When she stepped out, her mouth opened in shock. Above them, the sky stretched wide and clear. No ceiling, no shadows, just stars, bright, beautiful, and free. She had never seen the stars before. Kirella stood there, eyes wide, glowing softly in the moonlight. It's real, she whispered. Jack smiled. Told you I'd get you out. They were on a high hill, far outside the alien zones. Below them were trees, rivers, and silence. The perfect hiding spot, for now. Jack led her to a small cave in the hillside. He had found it weeks ago while exploring, just in case he ever needed to disappear. Tonight it became their home. Inside, he started a fire. The warm light danced across the walls. Kirella sat close to the flames, holding her hands near it like a child. She had no shoes. Her feet were scarred and bruised. Jack took off his own jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You saved me," she said softly. Jack shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just opened a door." Kirella looked down. Many opened doors before, none stayed. That sentence broke Jack's heart. He poured her a warm drink and handed it over. She sipped slowly, as if tasting hope for the first time. Outside, the night wind carried the sounds of the forest. Safe. Peaceful. For the first time in her life, Kirella slept without pain. Jack didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, watching her rest. She wasn't just an alien girl. She was proof that something terrible was happening in the dark places of the galaxy, and no one was talking about it. But now, one voice could change that. When morning came, Kirella woke and looked at Jack. "I want to learn," she said. "Learn what?" "Your language, your world, everything." Jack chuckled. "All right. First word, sky." She looked up. "Sky." He nodded. "Good. Now, hope." She pointed to him. "Hope?" Jack blinked, surprised. "No, that's not." He stopped. Maybe it was. They spent the day gathering supplies. Jack showed her how to heat water, build traps for food, and track the sun. She learned fast, but when he showed her a mirror, her first time seeing her own face, she froze. "This is me?" He nodded. "Yeah." Kirella touched her face. Looks, I'm broken." Jack stepped closer. "No, you look strong. You look alive." She looked at him, and something changed in her eyes. Something new. Not fear, not pain, but trust. That night, as stars filled the sky again, Kirella sat beside Jack, close to the fire. "I dreamed once," she said, "of a place with stars. I thought it was just my mind protecting me." Jack looked up. "Well, dreams can come true." She smiled. But far away, the trackers had found signs of movement, broken leaves, faint energy trails. The lead hunter spoke into his device. "They've gone north. The human has taken her off grid. Send the death squad. We'll bring her back." Piece by piece. Back at the cave, Kirella suddenly shivered. Jack asked, "You okay?" She looked into the flames. "They're coming." They came to take her back. The sun hadn't even risen when Jack heard it. A sharp whine in the sky. Then, silence. He stepped out of the cave, eyes scanning the horizon. Fog covered the forest below. But something was wrong. Birds were gone. Wind had stopped, it was too quiet. Inside the cave, Kirella sat cross-legged, drawing symbols on the ground with a stick. Jack had seen her do this before. She said it helped her remember who she was, before the pain, before the cage. "Kirella," Jack said calmly, "we might have to run again." She looked up. "They're here, aren't they?" Jack nodded once. Kirella stood, her face still, calm. But her hands trembled. Then came the sound. Not footsteps, not ships, but a voice coming from a speaker hidden somewhere in the woods. "Return the subject. You have 10 minutes. Human, your cooperation will decide her fate." Jack clenched his fists. "Fate? They think they still own you." Kirella whispered. "They always said I was property, but you call me by my name." Jack checked his tools. One stun grenade, one pulse mine, his old hunting knife. "We're outnumbered." Kirella stepped forward. "Then let me help." Jack looked at her. "You're still recovering," she interrupted, voice stronger than ever before. "I'd rather fall standing next to you than live on my knees again." The trees shifted. Shapes moved through the mist. Tall, armored soldiers with black masks and glowing weapons. They weren't here to negotiate. One of them stepped forward. "Human, step aside. The experiment belongs to the Union." Jack stepped between them and Kirella. "She belongs to no one." A weapon charged. Kirella reached for Jack's arm, but not in fear, in focus. "I remember something now," she said. "One of the experiments, it unlocked something, energy, inside me." Jack blinked. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the soldiers attacked. Jack threw the pulse mine. It exploded with a wave of blue light, short-circuiting the first wave of attackers. He pulled Kirella behind a rock. Lasers blasted past them. The cave behind them cracked from the pressure. Jack peeked out to throw the stun grenade, but it was gone. Kirella was holding it. "Wait." Too late. She jumped out and threw it high into the air. It flashed white. The soldiers shouted, blinded. Kirella didn't run back. She stood tall, arms raised. Her skin began to glow, brighter than before. Her eyes turned violet blue like burning stars. "I am not your subject," she said. "I am not your property." A wave of energy exploded from her chest like a shockwave of light. The soldiers flew backward like leaves in a storm. Some dropped their weapons. Others lay still. Jack ran to her, shielding her. "Kirella, are you okay?" She fell to her knees, breathing hard. "It's not perfect, but it's mine now, my power, my choice." Suddenly the sky opened. A larger ship hovered above, black and massive. A voice boomed, "Enough, you had your chance. We will reclaim her by force." From the ship a new figure descended. No armor, just robes and glowing hands. The chief geneticist. The one who created her. He smiled coldly. "Hello, Subject 37K. You've come far. Now come home." Kirella stood, trembling, but not with fear, with fury. Jack raised his knife. "She's not going anywhere." The scientist laughed. "You think love changes what she is? She was grown in a lab, not born. She doesn't belong in your world." Kirella stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "No," she said quietly. "I don't belong in your world anymore." With a cry, she raised her hands, this time not to defend, but to destroy. The energy surged again, but more controlled, focused. The scientist raised a barrier, but it cracked. Jack stepped beside her, not to fight, but to stand with her. Together they pushed the enemy back, and the words Kirella whispered last stayed in the forest like fire in the wind. "You called me a tool, but he called me a person. That's why I'm stronger now." He fought alone. Smoke filled the forest. The enemy ship retreated for now, but it wouldn't stay away for long. Jack stood near the edge of the hill, breathing hard. Kirella lay unconscious, inside the cave wrapped in blankets. The last energy burst had taken too much from her. She had saved them. Now it was his turn. Jack checked his gear. Empty. No more pulse mines. No more grenades, just a short blade in his bare hands. He stepped outside and looked at the sky. It was turning red with sunrise. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "And I'll be ready." 3 hours later, the sky split open again. But this time, they didn't speak. They attacked. 5 dropships landed across the hill, silent and fast. Soldiers poured out. Dozens of them, armored, armed, trained to kill. Inside the cave, Kirella stirred. Her eyes opened, slow and cloudy. She whispered, "Jack." He wasn't beside her. He was out front, alone. Jack stood tall at the entrance of the cave, holding only a staff made from metal scraps. He dug his feet into the dirt and said one sentence. To the soldiers, "You're not taking her." The lead soldier stepped forward. "You think one human can stop us?" Jack didn't answer. He moved, fast, brutal, desperate. He swung the staff, knocking 2 soldiers back, then rolled and grabbed a stun rifle from one of them. One shot, miss. Second shot, hit. They came in waves, and still, he stood. Blood dripped from his arm. His breathing grew heavy, but he didn't fall, because behind him was a girl who had never been free until him. Kirella tried to rise. Her legs shook. Her mind spun. But she heard the sounds, blasts, grunts, metal hitting stone. and something inside her woke up again. Not her powers, her will. She stood and limped outside. What she saw made her stop cold. Jack, alone, surrounded by smoke and soldiers, still fighting. His arm cut, his face bruised, but his eyes burning with fire, all for her. He looked back once, saw her standing, and smiled. "You should have stayed inside," he said. "I couldn't," she replied. She stepped forward slowly. One of the soldiers raised a weapon. Jack moved to block, but Corella raised her hand. "Not for an attack, for control. I don't want to destroy any more," she said softly. "But I will, if I must." Her glow returned, calmer this time, steady. The soldiers froze. The air pulsed. Then a voice came through the soldiers' comms. "Retreat." The squad leader blinked. "Sir? Leave them, for now. If she's this stable, she's beyond our leash. We'll wait. And watch." The soldiers vanished into the smoke like ghosts. Jack collapsed to one knee, breathing heavy. Corella caught him before he hit the ground. "You fought them, all alone?" she asked, voice cracking. Jack nodded. "I told you you're not going back." She looked down at him. "Then I won't let you fall." That night she cared for him, cleaned his wounds, fed him water, watched him sleep beside the fire. She stared at his face in the flickering light. "He's broken," she whispered to herself. "But so am I. And maybe broken things can save each other." Far in the dark sky, the scientist watched the footage from his ship. "She's not ours anymore," he muttered. "But that human, he made her strong." He turned off the screen and walked away. The battle wasn't over, but he had lost the girl. The choice that shook the stars' morning light touched the hilltop like a quiet blessing. Corella stood at the edge of the ridge, watching the sunrise for the second time in her life, but the first time without fear. Jack sat nearby, his arm bandaged, his clothes torn, but his spirit unbroken. He carved something into the rock with a small knife, letters in both human and Kirillan script. Corella read it aloud. "Free." She smiled, but peace never lasted long for people like them. Later that day, a signal lit up Jack's old emergency beacon. A neutral ship landed in the field carrying a message from the Intergalactic Council. They had seen the data leaks, files secretly uploaded by Jack while Corella slept. Files that exposed the dark secrets of Sector 9. The Council wanted a meeting. With Corella. She hesitated. "Why me?" Jack answered. "Because they'll never listen until someone who survived it speaks." She looked at him, fear returning to her eyes. "What if they see me the same way? A test subject, a weapon?" Jack took her hand. "Then show them who you really are." The council hall was massive, cold, tall, full of aliens from across the galaxy, generals, diplomats, scientists, and her, the girl they had once labeled Subject 37K. She walked slowly to the center, wearing simple clothes, no armor, no mask. Just herself. Some looked at her with pity, some with fear, some with awe. But all of them listened. Corella spoke. She told them of the pain, of the cage, of the screams behind steel walls, of how the experiments tried to change her body, then break her soul, but then she told them of a human, a man who saw her, not as a weapon, not as a thing, but as a person. And in her final words, she said, "You didn't create a monster. You created a survivor, and I choose not to go back in the cage. I choose freedom. I choose life, and I choose the man who gave it to me." The hall fell silent. And then they stood. Every member of the council rose from their seats. Some bowed their heads, others touched their hearts. The message was clear. She would never be owned again. Back on the hill, Jack waited. The ship returned, landing quietly. Corella stepped off and ran to him, eyes shining. "They believed me," she whispered. "They believed us." He nodded. "Good." She leaned in. "They offered me a place, a position. I could help shut down the other labs. Jack smiled. Then you should take it. I will, she said. But only if you're beside me. He paused. You sure? Corella looked at him, more sure than ever. You opened the door to my cage. But it was your kindness that opened the door to my heart. The galaxy would later tell the story of a girl born in a lab, shaped by pain, and set free by a human who refused to leave her behind. They would say her choice changed laws, ended programs, and awakened empathy across star systems. But Jack and Corella didn't care about legends, they just cared about watching the stars together.